Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Weird Science YouTube Comics channel or Comics YouTube channel. I don't know, flip it, reverse it, rub it down. I'm like Belle Biv DeVoe here. Hey, I'm Jim, and this is my solo review of G.I. Joe #1. I did a longer form, we'll see by the end of this if it's a longer form, but I did an exclusive review on our Patreon exclusive Indie Comics podcast with my man Zach. We ended up doing that on Tuesday night. And that is over on our Patreon, patreon.com/weirdscience if you want to hear both of us talking about this issue. The reason, though, that I'm coming and doing a solo review is one reason and one reason only. Sus Gabe. Because me and Zach do our review, because we're fancy and we get review copies. We do the reviews on Tuesday night. You know, fancy, pinkies up. We end up doing that, I get done. And then Wednesday comes around and the books come out and people are reviewing them. And then eventually I end up seeing Sus Gabe rearing his sus head and gave this book a 7 out of 10. And I thought, you know what? I need to defend the honor of G.I. Joe #1 because it's not a 7. 7 isn't a bad score. I'm not going to say it. I like to peruse all the numbers, right? But for this book, that is ridiculous. And he ends up saying that it's kind of a basic bitch story, that also he didn't like the colors. That's Jordie Bellaire, and how dare you, Sus Gabe. Now, if you end up seeing Sus Gabe out and about, say at the rec center, or maybe the Five and Dime, what you need to do is yell, "Hey, Sus Gabe," point and laugh at him, give him the finger or something like that if you really want, and then run. You just run away. Not because you're afraid of Sus Gabe. It's because that's funny. It's funny to yell things and run, right? So run away and laugh, and then let me know. Because, you know, if you're at the rec center or the Five, you'll be able to see him because the cool kids ain't going to be around him. They're going to be around me. We're going to be shooting hoops, doing stuff like that, right? Even at the Five and Dime, we're just shooting hoops everywhere because that's what we do. But Gabe, Sus Gabe, this is maybe a diss track against Gabe and his 7 out of 10 review. And I just want to start off by saying that I love the Duke book by Joshua Williamson and Tom Reilly. This is the same creative team. You get the feel right away, but I also did enjoy the Cobra Commander book. Then each one is like diminishing returns. Like Duke is going to be one of my books of the year. Then there's Cobra Commander. It's like a runner-up for book of the year. I really did like it. Not as much as Duke, though. Then you get the Destro book, Damn Waters, coming in on that one. And you end up like, all right, like that was okay. I wasn't horribly, upset that I read it. But what that book, how I could explain it if you haven't, or even if you have read it, it felt like you needed to get to square one because this is a new universe. But to do that, you started just 2 steps back on purpose. And then you get to square one just to go forward. But it was okay. You get some okay things in that. Then there's the book that ye will not mention. That's Scarlet. And I just mentioning it might be a war crime. It's possible. That book stunk. And luckily, I feel like I'm better for not have read all of it. I dumped it, right? And I mean dumped it. So you get into this book, and Gabe ended up saying that it was a basic bitch story with the coloring and all that. I disagree because I think that, first off, in #1 issue, you need to introduce some characters. Yeah, they were introduced in the scattered books of the Energon Universe. But in the meantime, it's not that much of an introduction anyway, and it's cool and gives a personal angle that I like through Duke talking to Colonel Hawk. So Colonel Hawk. I'm telling you, I had the most problems tonight. It is 3:30 a.m. right now, and I am on a medication. I'm sick right now. I'm having I keep mixing up General Flagg and Colonel Hawk. But just to do one last thing, one last disclosure bit is I really do like G.I. Joe. I'm more of a G.I. Joe fan than I am a Transformers fan. If you had heard me talk about Transformers maybe in reviews or also on the Aficionado show over at Wes's channel, Thinking Critical, I will bring up the same thing. People always get mad, but there's no reason to be mad, right? Because I recognize the Transformers book as being a very good book. It's very well done. But if you don't have a connection to the Transformers, there's going to be a disconnect. I have no connection to the Transformers. I mean, I say that and people are like, oh, he means that he's not a fan. No. I have no connection. I've never watched a second of the cartoon because when I was a kid, I played sports. I wasn't in watching the cartoons, you nerds. I was out, playing sports because I wanted to stick it to them. But with that, too, never saw the cartoon movie. I will eventually. Never did. I say that. It's how old am I? The other thing is I've never watched a second of the live action. It's just not my thing. Hey, Shia LaBeouf, I hear he's a gem. But the idea of all that, I have no connection. So in the which I was reading and still am reading the Transformers, I stopped reviewing it because I just kept running into that roadblock kind of thrown at you. The idea of, oh, people are like, wait till you see this cliffhanger. I'm like, I don't know what that is. I would go through the Transformers books and have to look up stuff just to see what character that was, let alone that they're like, oh my God, that's so crazy because what happened in the movie or what happened this, and I just didn't have the. It would be like me saying, I'm a huge Beatles fan. If I went to somebody who had no connection, no, they don't even know who the Beatles are. I mean, there might be one person alive like that. But if I went and like, you know what, I really love the White Album. How about you? They're like, what are you, a racist? I'm like, what? They have no connection. They don't know what I'm talking about. Same with the Transformers, right? So I don't know the difference between a cliffhanger and a cliff jumper. I do now. I actually was learning a bit more, but G.I. Joe's more my thing. And this definitely, Duke going into this is my thing. And so we'll get into this issue again as G.I. Joe #1. This is what keeps happening. I've recorded this so many times, and every time I'm like, I'm talking about this. Now it's the Beatles. I'm talking about the Beatles anytime. The U.S. people I record with, one of the things when I record with people, like a Stork or a Gray, and speaking of which, me and Gray are planning on doing our Best of the Week show again if you were a person who watched it. I was going to say a fan, but that seems pretentious. That seems like a little bit beyond the deal. But if you did like the show, me and Gray are planning on doing it. One of the things that kind of screwed us up was the time change. The daylight savings time here in the States. Gray is legitimately in Japan. He's not really an AI, but he is in Japan. From Manchester to Japan, he went. Now I found out today earlier that also Australia. He's all over the place, this guy. He's global. But the deal is that time change, and he is a teacher and has to get up early. So it's the idea that he can't stay up late, but I can't get up early. And that's just because I'm lazy. But we're getting it together. I hope to have it this week. And if we do, I will have this issue. Spoiler alert. I love the issue. So with all of that, though, going into it, now I don't even remember. Oh, I was saying before we end up recording, I just yakety yak for like 3 hours. I waste so much time before we record. Me and Gray talk a lot about the Beatles. That's all that was. I don't know why I was. See, I'm doing it here. It is very late/early. That's the worst. When you're up and you're like, boy, it's late, but it's actually early because you stayed up way too late. I think that hits the 3 a.m. Once you get past 3, now it's early. Before it was late. But there you go. I'm wacky. You end up where you start off and you get the introduction of the team. And the team as rock and roll, for now, Stalker, CoverGirl, Clutch, and Baroness. The wild card, obviously, being Baroness. Kind of a weird play. And with this being a new thing, it's still, I'm having problems not when they say, oh, I don't like Baroness. And this is the characters in the book. I don't like her. She's a war criminal. I'm like, you always expect like, no. She's, oh yeah, this just started. So she's not. But with that whole deal, she is badass. I love her. And I love her in this. And Joshua Williamson does a great deal with the characters in that, even with the little bit of dialogue and interactions with each other in this single issue. You really get a feel for them. And I really think he does a great job. And this is from somebody, me, who's not really a huge Joshua Williamson fan. One time I will tell you that I was told by somebody that was at a convention and mentioned our podcast was mainly the deal. I don't even think we had a YouTube channel at that point, but mentioned the podcast. And Joshua Williamson said he hated us. So there's a badge of honor. But I don't let that skew my idea of how great it is, because this issue is great. But you get more of a personal touch. And it's like Gabe was saying in a sus review, like, oh, we know who rock and roll is. But I do like that touch where you end up having Duke talk and say, yeah, rock and roll, everybody knows he's heavy artillery. But that's just this file. You spend any time with him, and you can see he's got a big heart and loyal to the day he dies. Now, he says that, and that's today. But in that, that's cool. And it gives you it gives you the connection. It gives you a human connection that, sadly, you can't get that in the Transformers because they ain't human. But You have Stalker, him and the languages, that comes into play later. I do think that CoverGirl and Clutch don't get much action in this issue. I'm hoping to see more. I really do like both the characters. And what you get in this, Baroness again being that wild card, but a lot of people like Baroness. What I think what you get here is some of the most likable G.I. Joes. And even if you end up, well, none of them are your favorite, like Rock and Roll, as an example, I don't know that I've never met anybody that doesn't like Rock and Roll. And I'm not even talking the music. I've met some people who don't like that, but Rock and Roll is such a cool character, and explaining it the way that Duke did, it's true. So even if you don't have Rock and Roll as your favorite, you still love him. And that's what makes this a big issue as we go forward. But the introduction I thought was really well done. The art's great. And during this, you end up having Baroness have problems with her jetpack and looks like she's going to plummet to her fiery death. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But it almost is like a weird twist that she almost dies. And then you're like, oh, thank God, I thought somebody was going to die in the first issue. That'd be crazy. And then we get to the end, which is crazy. But Duke ends up saving her. And she basically throws the rocket back and you Yankee blue jeans, you Americans make crap equipment. And then walks up, doesn't even say thanks. And that's 100% Baroness. I thought that was really, really well done. And so with this, Duke is talking to Colonel Hawk and talking about the team. And Colonel Hawk then twists it around and says, listen, Duke, you're putting this team together, but you're trying to make Dukes. You're trying to have a team of all Dukes. That doesn't work. And he talks about when he was out in the field and he was in the shit and he had a team and he wanted them to all be Hawks, but they were individuals. And that's what made the team stronger. It's nothing that you need, but I thought it was really cool. Again, a bit of a human interaction, a bit of a personal touch there that I thought was cool. And it did remind me very quickly of the idea of somebody who's really, really good at sport. I'm talking like a Wayne Gretzky, best ever. I mean, no doubt, one of the best in any sport, all the deal. Horrible coach, because he's there thinking everybody's Wayne Gretzky. He's he sees the game in slow motion. He knows this. He knows what everybody, not everybody, nobody sees it like Wayne, but that's how he is. So he wants to think or tries to think how aren't they doing this? They should all be like me. And that's kind of what I got from this, is the idea that you do need your role players. You do need your rock and rolls. You do need your Stalker. They already have Duke. Duke's great, but you don't need another Duke. You need these other characters, and he has a really cool team. And by the way, you're shipping out tomorrow, because that's what ends up happening. They're going to go off to protect a bit of Cybertron, but we'll get to that in a second, because we go to Springfield, and that's when you get Destro, Cobra Commander, all that. And it's actually very funny, but it's pretty cool. I love the idea that Destro wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to get that big cock energy and go on this giant platform, stand with my groin pushed out towards the exercising Cobra troops. And he's just he's loving it. He's got a chub there watching these Cobra troops go. And he's like, yes, our army grows with each passing day. One of the things about that, though, is he has a little secret. He's going to go and show Cobra Commander. And it's a very comical scene. First off, it starts horrifically, because we do a Darth Vader-esque deal where Cobra Commander's there without his mask. That you don't want that. And he's there and he's fixing up his robot hand. He's kind of tweaking that. And then Destro and Mercer, his man, come in. And I swear to God, when you have Cobra Commander hears the door open and he desperately lunges towards the helmet because he's a vain man. He doesn't want to go away. It would be great. Take the mirror away. He doesn't want to be seen. So he puts the helmet on, and then he's like, okay, what's this big hubbub you're talking about? What do you have? What this weapon? And you end up Destro hands a rifle. And I love the idea. It's not wordy, but what it basically is, and I'll go a little more than what, it's basically like Cobra Commander go, oh, you have a rifle, do you? I've never seen one of these before. And you make it, oh my God, who would ever think that you would make a rifle? And he's just digging into him. And Destro's like, no. We set up this target over here. Let's see how good your aim is. And this is one of the funnier lines in the whole deal, and funnier situations, because Cobra Commander's he's pissed that he had to put his helmet on because he's so vain. He doesn't like being vain. He points this gun right at Destro's face and says, indeed. And then Destro doesn't bat an eye. He says, I'm not entertained. I would have been crapping my pants. Like he says, I'm not entertained. My line would have been, I'm soiled because Cobra Commander, he's too much of a wild card. He might just, for goofs, just shoot your head off. But you get the play, too, as he's talking and moving and doing this, that he does legitimately just think, oh, here's another rifle. Maybe he's thinking, what is this going to be, like bigger bullets, or it's going to do this. He pulls the trigger, and it's a damn laser gun. It's an Energon laser gun. Now, if you were reading the Destro book and all the other things, first off, Energon seems to be, of short supply. But Destro did have it. He was trying to hide it from, say, the Crimson/Cobra twins in that book. This is a big advancement from there. The time that has passed, he has done this. I'm okay with that. But it did kind of come as a surprise. But what it really does is put a smile on my face because it ends up being the laser guns from the cartoon. That is awesome. It's a really cool way to do it. It's a real clever way to do it. And it put a smile on my face, which I'm not a guy who smiles a lot because I'm a miserable prick. Trademark. I am not a guy who, no reaction to anything. I'm kind of a pit of despair. I am. But this made me smile. It made me smile every time I read it. And I've read it a bunch of times now, including one time after I got done the review for our Patreon, just went and laid in bed all sexy like and read it again right after I read and reviewed it. And I've never done that. I legitimately never done that. When I'm done reviewing, that thing is out of sight, out of mind, and I got to move to the next thing. And I really liked it that much. So I was really having fun. And when you have Cobra Commander realizes he has a laser gun and the whole thing, Destro's so proud of himself for this. What he gets as a pat on the back is even better than you could ever imagine. What you get is Cobra Commander going, yes, and continuing the yes. It's so good. You know that Destro, now he has a chub again. So what we have then, we go off to Abu Dhabi. I always want to pronounce it there. You end up going, this is the one downer, but it's not much of a downer. You'll see from my score. But the idea that it kind of ruins the pacing and ruins the, cool characters that everybody knows and loves. To introduce a new character called Risk. Seems as he says he's a cage fighter. He goes to talk to this guy, this warlord guy, that he says he beats the crap out of all his guys. Of course, this warlord ends up threatening him, and his guys have guns, but you end up, there's no guns allowed in the place. So this new character, Risk, doesn't have it, but he says, I'm a cage fighter. I'm going to kick the ass of anybody, and does. He ends up just destroying this guy's bodyguards just to say to him, don't buy anything from Mars. So we'll have to see how that works out. It's a little extended. It's cool enough. He gets called back by whoever is talking to him on his Dick Tracy wrist phone there. But you don't really, it's more of a mystery, but I think it could have done with like a page or two less. But you end up going back and you get Colonel Flagg talking to him, or Colonel Hawk, I did it again, ends up where they're going to ship out, and you get some cool interactions between the team, and you do get Baroness just being a badass, but they have to go off and guard this piece of Cybertron. And there's a really cool spread page where you have Duke explaining what that means to the G.I. Joe team, while you have on the other side of the spread page Destro talking about that to Cobra. And then, like I said, Cobra Commander, he is a loose cannon, ends up like, and then when you steal this, you kill everybody but one guy so he could be the only one to say Cobra. Like, calm down, buddy. Calm down. We'll get this thing, but holy moly, somebody get this guy, off of caffeine. He is crazy. And you end up having the team go off to do this babysitting deal. Baroness doesn't like it. You end up where at one point she badmouths Stalker in Russian, but he knows Russian, so he throws it right back at her, and it's hilarious. Now, you can translate. It's actually written in Russian. It's very verbose. It's not great when you actually translate it. It's not as fun as not knowing what he says and kind of imagining it. And she's like, oh, how dare you? Like, oh my God, I got to see what he say. He just says, like, hey, I'm going to end up throwing you back to your parents, and they're going to be embarrassed. It's not great. But all of a sudden, Cobra attacks, and we get a really, really cool deal. And you get to see the team in action. You get to see Baroness just kicking complete ass. Duke ends up just jumping out the building. Very much like a Wolverine. I've seen Wolverine do this a million times, but jumps out of the building, grabs onto this helicopter that's shown up, and is, using a rail gun to shoot at them while the Cobra squad comes in. Now, in this, there's a huge explosion. You end up having a Cobra grenade go to the feet of Stalker. It blows up. Stalker is underneath a bunch of rubble. I people have debated, is he alive or dead? I mean, what you see at the point, it looks like this thing, there's no way you're going to end up not being blown to smithereens the way that you end up having that. And I don't mean the band that most people won't know. You end up where maybe he kicks it, it does blow up, it gets under. I hope, because I like Stalker. Rock and Roll ain't coming back. And when I said earlier about Clutch and Cover Girl, all they really do is grab the Cybertron artifact and they put it on a gurney and they're trying to get out. They don't do much. And they even get captured in the deal. I hope we get more of them later. But what happens is Rock and Roll is just, he's at one scene, one panel, he's got one guy in an arm lock, a headlock, and he's punching another guy, kicking another. It's really cool. But there's so many of these Cobra guys that he ends up kind of getting beat up. Duke has to open his damn mouth and says, hey, Rock and Roll, what's going on? What are you doing? Like, you there? And he's like, I'm getting up. It's round 2. And they got these laser guns, but I'm never afraid of a light show. And then gets lit up and he's dead. There's no way he's alive. It can't be. If it is, that's crazy and it'll be weird and I won't like it. Though I wish that he was alive. But the way that you see lasers going through his body on multiple points. Don't give me this, it missed every vital organ bullshit. So when you have that, though, I hope that Stalker actually is just knocked out. But I don't know. Underneath the rubble, he might not have a lower half. I mean, the way that grenade went off. But in it, though, it ends with Rock and Roll dead. I want to say seemingly dead, but he's got to be dead. So with that, though, it's good. It's such a good issue. It's fun. It has a tragic ending. It has an idea Baroness that, again, I really thought that was a misplay. Oh, what are they doing? That seems like a gimmick. I love her on the team, and I think I love Baroness anyway, but badass. And yeah, it all feels right. It all feels great coming off of, way back the Duke book and all the other things. It ties in a bunch of different things, but it does. Joshua Williamson does a really good job. What he does is, if you read all those books, you're going to be like, oh my God, this is so cool. If you didn't, I don't see many parts here where you're really going to be like, I don't know what's going on. It's well done. It's well explained. And it's kind of classic feeling, kind of why I end up having the smile on my face and why I'm giving this a 9.7. And that's one of the higher, scores I've given in quite some time, including the Duke book. I love it. I thought it was really good. And I suggest anybody picks it up, even if you're not interested. You might be. Just give it a shot. It's really cool. Again, though, I'll say, like I said with the Transformers, at the end, when I'm like, Rock and Roll, oh my God, that's my connection to the character and whatnot. If you don't have that, you're not going to have that, oh my God, feeling. You might be like, oh crap, that's crazy. But this is more emotional, like some people had with the Transformers that I wasn't getting. So I'm glad, and be happy for me, please. I don't get much in life, and I got this. So I really did like it. 9.7, I say. Go and get it. Easily my favorite book this week. One of my favorites of the year already. I hope it continues at this whole deal. If it continues this good, then old Duke's going to have to take a back seat because I really, really love it. But that is that. I hope everybody enjoyed it. And this proves another thing. First off, that Gabe is completely sus. But it also proves another thing. Lately, I've been getting a lot of people arguing with me. Imagine that. But arguing with me of the idea that I don't like anything. And while I am a miserable prick, and that is trademark, I do want to like things. And when I do end up enjoying something like this, I get excited. I understand where I've been told by a million people that, indie stuff and non-Big Two books don't get any play on YouTube. I don't care. Also, they say if you go over 20 minutes, that's ridiculous. I don't care. I like it this much. I like to talk about things that I like, and I don't get to do that often currently with the books coming out, and most of the time it's only with non-Big Two. I always end up saying that now because if I say indie, there's the pretentious prick who's going to show up and like, actually, they're not really indie. They're more mainstream. I'm like, whatever, dude. I mean, no Big Two. But the Big Two hurting, which just gives me and everybody else the opportunity to check out books like this. So there's always something to enjoy. But with all that, it's now 4 a.m. So I'm going to go to bed finally. I have to get up early. I'm recording this in what was Friday into Saturday morning. I have to get up because I'm going to be on the Aficionado show, which when this comes out, I would already have been on. I don't know what time I'm going to put this out. I may actually put out right as the Aficionados start. because that seems like a stupid move. And I do stupid moves. Do them a lot. So maybe I'll do that. But thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoy more content coming out. I have plans to do a bunch of videos, things like that. And I always do love reviewing things. And hopefully you don't mind that it goes over 20 minutes, as I say that to the 3 people left listening at this point because they bail. But yeah, thanks, everybody. And I'll talk to you all later.
Okay, Boomer.
You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.